All right, Saagar, what are you looking at?
Well, as we explained yesterday, one of the biggest problems with the Kyle Rittenhouse trial coverage in the mainstream media is they never actually told you what happened. If you watched only CNN or MSNBC, you probably had no idea what the actual facts of the case were, what Wisconsin's self-defense law is, and instead, you got a bunch of screeching opinions, right and left, which leave the entire country much worse off when the thing actually happened. What we always try to ask in that situation is, why that trial? Well, it was pretty convenient for the narratives of the right and left. As I always say here, what they choose to show you is not nearly as important as what they choose not to show you. And one of the trials that's happening right now and getting zero press attention is that of Jeffrey Epstein's right-hand woman and alleged decades-long sexual predator, Ghislaine Maxwell, allegedly, for the lawyers, who has just begun. And coincidentally, nobody at CNN or Fox or MSNBC seems to care all that much. So I'll break it down for all of you. Maxwell is finally on trial, the date set for November 29, after her defense team has buried the court in motions for dismissal and complaints over her imprisonment conditions, over trying to interview case agents involved in the Epstein case, and so much more. It's been a very long road of passing the buck to this point, and a lot of Epstein watchers like myself have been puzzled as to why more information has not come out about that case. Maxwell is being tried on 6 counts specifically of sexual assault, including transporting minors to engage in criminal sexual activity. The allegations against Maxwell stem from criminal activity, allegedly, in 1994 and 2004. Now that's critical to our understanding because these actions took place before Epstein's sweetheart deal with the Palm Beach County Police and the FBI, where he barely served any jail time and eventually was let off and victimized hundreds of other young girls. Yet, even with the old charges, there are a lot of very powerful people with a lot to lose. Vicky Ward, one of the reporters who's known about Epstein for the longest time, she writes in Rolling Stone magazine that the rich and powerful in New York City are terrified about one thing in particular. If Ghislaine Maxwell takes the stand in a last-ditch effort not only to save herself, she can do so to burn many of the people who helped her survive over the last several decades. Maxwell, in testifying for her own defense, would be allowed to admit and say anything in open court as long as the judge rules that it's in favor of her theory of the case. Now, her defense so far has been she didn't do anything wrong. The only person who did was Jeffrey Epstein, and that because he's dead, she's being put on trial in his stead. There's some truth to that, certainly. But nearly every Jeffrey Epstein victim reports that Maxwell allegedly groomed them, that she procured them for his abuse, and in many cases she participated in the abuse herself. She also, of course, served as a very important social validator for Epstein, bringing Prince Andrew into his orbit and Bill Clinton, many other powerful people that she became acquainted with through her rich father's connections. That raises another question. Within the accusation against Ghislaine Maxwell is an acknowledgement by the federal government that she and Epstein did not act alone. In fact, Maxwell maintains that others were involved too. Their names remain redacted. And interestingly enough, it's not just Maxwell saying that. Epstein's victims, who are concerned that these 2 women whose names are redacted are apparently cooperating with the government in exchange for not having charges brought against them. One victim said that it just wasn't right that Maxwell alone faces trial when so many others were involved. And indeed, that is what this trial highlights to me. It's really just not enough at all. We're talking at the end of the day here about just 2 cases of sexual assault when we know that she and Epstein were involved in hundreds of others, allegedly. Of course, Epstein had many valets and assistants and personal acquaintances who helped him, but honestly, it's deeper than even just the assault in the hundreds of cases. The question surrounds his longtime entanglement with some of the most powerful people on the globe. Take, for instance, a story which we highlighted but will never go to trial. Barclays' former CEO, Jess Staley, was forced to resign from the head of one of the largest banks in Europe because regulators found deep ties between him and Epstein. So deep that they found he exchanged 1,200 emails with Epstein over 4 years that included unexplained terms in an apparent code which was known to them, including the term, quote, Snow White, which means he has refused to explain what that means. Ugh. Staley has claimed that he let his relationship with Epstein taper off. But in fact, right before he joined Barclays, he was literally on Epstein's private island and sailed his yacht there. He also allowed Epstein to, quote, mentor one of his daughters during her college application, which is certainly a choice. And Staley is the only in the latest of series of high-profile men to have been revealed as Epstein associates. We have Bill Gates, or Leon Black, one of the richest men on Wall Street, who caught paid $150 million to Epstein for tax advice. Or Glenn Dubin, the billionaire hedge fund manager, whose wife apparently also dated Epstein, and literally had him over for Thanksgiving dinner at their house while he was on probation. Or Leslie Wexner, the original source of Epstein's wealth, who has never once said why he allowed Epstein into his inner circle in the 1980s. None of those questions are getting answered at trial, but we'll continue to ask them here. And the media should be telling you a lot more about Ghislaine Maxwell's trial. They should be digging into the men that I mentioned. But that's too hard, so we'll get more race-baiting coverage instead, designed to rip us apart, while the real villains, they lurk right above us. And I think that's the crazy part here, Crystal.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut, our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it, you get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.